He's an excellent liar. Season 2, episode number 12. Hey. Expect more and pay less than ever before at Target. Today's episode of the Keep It 100 Girl podcast is brought to you by Target. If you are just as psyched and excited about seeing the Black Panther Marvel movie, then you need to check out Target's superhero collection. And look, you're going to save 20% on Black Panther toys, bedding, and even decor. Next, for all you online shoppers, if you're planning that spring break vacation, Target is offering 50% off their swimwear. Use the shopping link bit.ly/100 Target Girl to shop for these weekly deals. Welcome to the Keep It 100 Girl podcast. This is a show where I share with all my listeners 50 shades of cray and lessons learned so we could all learn or just reinforce keeping it 100 in 2018. Every week, Nina is unapologetically herself. And you know what? You can become unapologetically yourselves too, with no filters, judgment, or any boundaries when it comes to using your voice. That's what Keep It 100 is all about. It's raw, it's real, it's grown talk. We women and men tell the truth, nothing but the truth, even if it's totally embarrassing or super cray. I'm your host, Nina Babel, and are you guys ready to keep it 100? Are you ready to keep it real and true?
Yes, I'm ready to keep it 100.
I'm ready to keep it 100, girl.
You know I'm going to keep it 100.
Well, in last week's episode, I chatted about what men should know about buying flowers for Valentine's Day. And here's the deal. This is such evergreen content and doesn't really have to end on V-Day either. This episode shared a lot of good tips and advice straight from the flower shop, directly to men needing to buy flowers for any occasion. So check it out. And then in episode number 12, as part of Black History Month, I shared 10 Black-themed trips that you should take in 2018. Reason for this is it's time to do something different in 2018. And I've been preaching this since the beginning of the year, if you have been listening. And firsthand experiences are more than a vacation. There is something for everybody in that list, and I think you owe it to yourself to do one of those 10 this year. So, fast forwarding to today's episode, I kind of want to keep the momentum going on the whole #MeToo movement, and we've seen a surge, a rising of women coming forward to tell their personal real-life stories, more around why she stayed. And women have felt vulnerable in expressing their own emotions when it comes to this topic. But given the indictments, the resignations, the admissions, the confessions from men, it's made it a safer place for us to express our emotions around this topic and our experiences. But emotional and verbal abuse in relationships and marriages is real. And it's an ongoing thing. And I'm talking, this is generations of an ongoing thing. But hear what? There is no statute of limitations on talking about it. I don't care what anybody says. What irks me even more when you hear and read comments is you women out there defending, in this example, the current administration's indefensible behavior and insensitivity when it comes to domestic violence. And the most recent example is this whole Rob Porter debacle going on in the United States.
My inspiration to have this topic, I did a few episodes ago, I talked about just kind of redefining sexual consent and empowering women on how to say no in just general dating situations, because there might be a time where you can't. So I offered up different scenarios and even my scripted responses to give to females on how to go about doing that and practicing it so that it becomes second nature and they're not caught off guard. But this is a situation that's same but the different, dealing with domestic abusers. And what attracted me was some of these are on the surface great guys, whether they're intelligent, whether they're Ivy League decorated, you know, whether they have stars and stripes of credentials galore. But at the end of the day, most people are shocked because they'll say he's such a great guy and have that cast of doubt, which is really the textbook reaction, but the wrong one. In your experience, I guess, you know, it's all about empowering women to be smarter and to avoid or recognize those situations as they appear.
Too many times, women are not believed or even protected. In this episode, myself and Concha Farrell are going to teach women to be mindful from the beginning of your relationship, right? I'm free. At the engagement stage or even marriage stage, before you get to either one. But I'd like to welcome and use this opportunity to introduce Concha, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist, for this episode. And she is the founder of the Inspired Journey Counseling Center in downtown LA. So she's been in private practice for 6 years now and has worked as a coach and therapist for 9 years.
Most people are shocked because they'll say he's such a great guy and have that cast of doubt, which is really the textbook reaction, but the wrong one. In your experience, I guess, you know, it's all about empowering women to be smarter and to avoid or recognize those situations as they appear. And I'm just going to speak from one. I haven't had, thankfully, any of those experiences, but I do recall back in my dating days, just having that gut feeling like this doesn't feel right when I felt like they were aggressive, but not in a good way. And I didn't entertain the thought of having another conversation because I just went with my gut. So how do we teach women to go with their gut?
Okay, so this is a really kind of complicated question, I say, because, you know, sometimes the gut is right and sometimes the gut is not right, right? So we want to walk a line between, you know, not being prejudiced, you know, and prejudging someone, but of course being cautious and being mindful of what our instincts tell us. You know, for example, what I mean by that is, like, let's say somebody, God forbid, was just was raped. Okay, that person's gut response toward men is going to be different than a woman who's not raped. That woman is going to be a more hypervigilant, more nervous, right? So the gut response, we have to add some other ingredients in there too, right? We have to add a little bit like context and situation to try to figure out like what is the best course of action. I thought it was such a great and important topic. I was like, I have to show up. If you've been a therapist or a psychologist for an extended amount of time, one of the gifts that you get is that you see the other side.
Before we begin, what you should also know about Concha is prior to pursuing a career in mental health, Concha worked in the First Lady's Office of Communication in the White House, the marketing department at DreamWorks Films, and, believe it or not, as a street DJ at KPWR Power 106 FM in LA, and has won numerous film and TV commercial roles as an actress. What do I ask all my interviewees when they come on the show? Are you ready to keep it 100, Concha?
Every day. All the time.
So I asked Concha to introduce herself to you guys and give a little more background, but both of our goals is to raise awareness for domestic violence to many women of all ages, right? This is all ages, people, from teenage years and beyond. And most importantly, to those who are ashamed to speak out.
I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist. I've been in private practice for almost a decade now. I own a counseling center in downtown Los Angeles, the Inspired Journey Counseling Center. I'm also a sex therapist and a dating coach for women. And I specialize in helping people get healthy relationships, lasting love, and satisfying sex. And when I'm not working with clients, I host the Stay Inspired podcast, which is, again, really focusing on just helping people live quality lives and get the lives that they deserve.
The message throughout this episode is to love yourself above anyone or anything else. Know that.
Is it important for you to say, you know what, I got too much going on in my life. I love myself too much. I'm not even going to put myself in a situation that increases the likelihood that something like that might happen.
All right, let's move forward and talk about dating and the unknown. Like, you're engaged, you're married to somebody, and then all of a sudden, you're subject to these violent episodes. Concha spells out two scenarios, right? When you're dating, the activities leading to you getting engaged, and marriage.
Okay, this is another area where we need to break it down into like kind of two things here. And I always am looking at, first of all, how do I empower a woman in this situation, right? And so first of all, before you get to engagement and before you get to marriage, if you have a mindful dating practice, right, where you're paying attention to your partner, you're being conscious about the behavior and how you're being treated, you will see signs that something isn't right far before you get to engagement. The question is, and there's something in therapy called good faith, right? Good faith versus bad faith. Good faith is when you see something that you know isn't a good sign, and you say, you know what? I see that this is not a good sign, so therefore I'm going to act differently. That's good faith. Bad faith is you see something that you know isn't a good sign, and then you say, well, but he's such a nice guy, and he seems... You just saw something that's not healthy, right? A therapist cannot make you live your life with good or bad faith. But if you, again, care about yourself enough to do what you can to put yourself in good situations, I would say the minute that a man shows you aggressive behavior, right, mean-spirited behavior, dominating behavior, and again, you will see this early in the relationship if you have good faith and you're looking for it, that's the time to get out. Don't stick around.
Abusers are usually extremely charming to everyone else around, and that's why it's really hard sometimes to comprehend or to try to explain to folks what's happening. Again, as Concha puts it, it's referred to as bad faith. Oftentimes, people will vouch for the abuser as being like, oh, he's such a nice guy, or turn to you and say, maybe you're provoking him, or because he doesn't seem like that type of person.
So as a general rule, especially around men, because, grandma used to say, a woman can break your heart, but a man can break your neck. If there's anything that's making you feel unsafe, best to just go the cautious route, right? Cautious route being, getting out of the situation, stepping back, making sure there's other people around you, things like that. I think, if you're just talking about there's a man somewhere and you feel uncomfortable, like how to handle that. But then I think there's another part to this that I think can be very empowering for women. And I want to make the distinction between a situation and how you behave in a situation versus picking a healthy frame. And this is what I think women should try to focus on instead of trying to handle what's happening in the situation in the moment. I think the attention should be picking better frames.
Awareness needs to be raised so that women trapped in these relationships can be empowered to get out. So listen to what Concha explains as far as safety and getting out.
Sociopathic people can use masks. So they understand that in this situation, they need to use a mask to further whatever they're trying to do. So they just put on a mask and they operate within the confines of the mask. Like their sense of self is based on whatever they need to do in the moment to get what they want. So if they need to put on a mask of kind and friendly and gregarious, they'll do it because that's what they need to do in the moment to get what they want. If they need to put on a mask of dominant, aggressive, violent, whatever to get sex, they'll do that because that's what they need to do to get what they want, right? There's no like intrinsic sense of self that has like empathy and compassion for others. It's just like, imagine like a series of masks that a person puts on in a bunch of different situations, and that is who they are, right? I think if safety is the goal for women, women should be considering both like what to do in the situation when it arises and how to not walk into frames that have a higher potential of being dangerous. Does that make sense? It's just important to be mindful of potential consequences. So no one's saying you can't do things. You could do whatever you'd like to do. But I think it's important to also be aware of potential consequences for situations that you go into.
And so she stayed. Every woman who has been in an abusive relationship can identify with the experiences shared by both of Rob Porter's ex-wives.
By the time you get into engagement and marriage, you have seen a whole bunch of stuff, right? You know if the guy isn't, on the up and up, right? So I just say avoid the whole situation by being more mindful in the beginning.
It takes a lot of courage for women to walk away, especially when their abuser is at their most dangerous stage. If someone tells you that they are in an abusive relationship, believe them, because it takes a lot of courage to speak up. They're not lying, and you know what? They're asking for your help.
Let's empower women to understand a couple examples of a good face, bad face.
Yes. Okay. So good faith is you're on a first date with a guy and you're sitting there. The waiter comes by and the waiter accidentally, drops a fork or something on the guy's lap. And the guy jumps up. Hey, you dumb, you know what? What the F is this, man? You messing up my stuff. He jumps up and gets in the waiter's face. Man, what's your problem? Okay. That is a very aggressive man. Having good faith would be to say, this is a very aggressive man. This may indicate some other kind of emotional or behavioral problems. I'm not going to stick around for this to see how it pans out just because he looks good or just because he's from an Ivy League school or just because he has a Lexus, right? He's demonstrated a very dangerous and aggressive behavior. Good faith says, I'm not going to do this. Bad faith says, oh, well, he's so cute and he has a PhD. It's not a big deal. I'm going to see where this goes.
So many women do this on all kinds of levels. There's so many permutations of this exact scenario. These men show the world the side of them they want you to see. And the wife, their children, sees the real person. So when a woman says she is being abused, people may not believe her because the man people see on the outside is nothing like what she is describing.
Because I think as females, like I've often heard or even made the error myself. You make excuses for the guy for him to be, you make excuses even though you know he's done wrong.
You see, and this is where I wish I could just give my brain and my experience to every woman who's listening. If you've been a therapist or a psychologist for an extended amount of time, one of the gifts that you get is that you see the other side, right? I see the other side. I see the consequence of when women say, oh, well, and they make an excuse, and then years later, they're in a domestic violence relationship. They're they have to deal with being betrayed. Now their life is in shambles. They have to pick it all up. You know, one of the most important choices a woman can make in her life is her partner. A partner can make your life heaven or hell on earth. And I think that we tend to be pretty cavalier about it. Like, oh, I like him. It's fun. It's like, no. This is someone that can like literally make your life a pleasant, uplifting, positive experience or drag you into hell. And I've seen both.
Abusers are smart, right? And here's what. They're smart about covering up their evilness so no one but their victims know. And as you can see, Rob Porter is still doing that to this day, despite being divorced from his ex-wives.
This is interesting, right? And I hope this will give you some insight about DV relationships and women who stay in them. Because oftentimes what people say is, how could she stay? Like, if he beats her up, how could she stay? Well, there's a hormone called oxytocin. And when you have sex with someone, the oxytocin is released, and it's basically like a bonding agent, right? It helps you to attach to the partner. And here's the thing about the oxytocin. Your oxytocin isn't a judge. Oxytocin is going to bond you to whoever you have sex with. And your body is kind of counting on your mind to make the judgment that this is a good person to bond with. Because once you've done the deed and the oxytocin comes out, it's going to do everything in its power to try to keep you with the person that you've chosen to bond with. So the rose-colored glasses come on. Women start justifying behavior, but it's like they're under this oxytocin trance. And this is just the way biology works. So a lot of these women who are in these DV relationships are kind of under this biological oxytocin spell that happens when you have repeated sexual intercourse with a person and you're bonded to them, that clouds their judgment, right? And so it's not really just like they're logical and rational and they see it and they can make a choice. They're kind of under this biochemical haze that keeps them in the relationship.
One of the reasons women don't go forward is the fear that no one will believe them because of their charming, dashing, decorated partner. Breaking it for these women is hard because you don't have the awareness, the sound awareness. And I'm not being judgy here. It's a biochemical trance that Concha referred to earlier, you know, the oxytocin thing, which we all are much aware of when it comes to sex.
Breaking it is not so easy, especially if you don't have the awareness to know, oh, wait a minute, I'm in an oxytocin haze. You know, the thing that's making me want to stay is biochemical, but I'm going to use my conscious choosing and my willpower to get out of this. If a woman doesn't have the vocabulary or the psychological literacy to understand that, she's just going to be stuck. And she's just going to be like, but I love him. But it's like, no, girlfriend, you're under an oxytocin spell.
So at what point do you snap out of that spell when you're being abused? I asked Concha the question.
And so it's not really just like they're logical and rational and they see it and they can make a choice. They're kind of under this biochemical haze that keeps them in the relationship. And breaking it is not so easy, especially if you don't have the awareness to know, oh, wait a minute, I'm in an oxytocin haze. You know, the thing that's making me want to stay is biochemical, but I'm going to use my conscious choosing and my willpower to get out of this. If a woman doesn't have the vocabulary or the psychological literacy to understand that, she's just going to be stuck. And she's just going to be like, but I love him. But it's like, no, girlfriend, you're under an oxytocin spell. But
so does the oxytocin wear off? Like, at what point do they snap out of that spell? Like, does it take something extreme?
It takes no contact, because every time you're having sex, you're reinforcing the attachment, right? So you're going to have to stop and put distance in the relationship. And if you don't, it's going to keep doing what it's designed to do, which is deepening the attachment.
What are the typical behaviors of an abuser after each violent episode? And it turns out it's a cycle.
Usually there's something called it's a cycle of violence. So there's distinct stages. So there's a tension building stage. Then there's the battering. Then there's the honeymoon stage. So after the battering happens, then the abuser is like remorseful, trying to get you presents. I'm so sorry, I'll never do it again, that kind of thing. And then once you accept the apology, you start in the tension building stage. Little things start to happen, build-ups start to happen, and then all of a sudden you have the battering, and then you go into the honeymoon stage. So it's like a vicious cycle that keeps on going and going and going.
With women who are abused, there is a profile, or there's certain traits that they possess that these men are attracted to or they prey on, one or the other or both. So next, I asked Concha to describe these high T guys, which are referred to as high testosterone guys, and the examples of their behavior that they're going to put on display.
I am so glad you asked that. What a great question. So one of the things that I focus on in the dating coaching that I do for women is helping women to understand different types of men based on testosterone level. And the reason that I pick testosterone level is because, number one, my first and foremost concern with women is safety, picking safe partners. Do you know that 95% of men in prison are high testosterone men? Now, that's not to say every man with high testosterone is going to be a violent offender, but it is saying, hey, wait a minute. If a guy is showing signs that he's a guy with high levels of testosterone, this is something to be careful about. So I'd say women should be mindful of higher testosterone guys. Again, high levels of testosterone aren't the only things, right? Issues of character come into place. But I found that just kind of keeping an eye open for high T guys and being a little bit extra mindful around them is beneficial. Because high T guys are the ones who are a bit more reckless, impulsive. They're more likely to cheat. They're less likely to get married. They're more likely to resolve conflicts with their hands through fighting versus with their mouth, right? So those are the guys I'd be careful of. And the little signs that you'd want to be aware of are things like, if you get into, if he has a problem with another man, does he solve it with words or does he solve it with his fist? Okay. If he solves it with his fist, that's not a good sign. This is someone who does not know how to channel their anger into constructive dispute resolution using the mouth. They go into physical, right? Are they in really aggressive lines of work? Are they a MMA fighter? Are they a boxer? Are they in hostile mergers and acquisitions, like really kind of dominant, aggressive kind of work? That's something to be mindful of, right? Day to day, they're being dominant and aggressive. So if you can imagine when they get home, they're still probably a little dominant and aggressive, right? So those are the little signs to just kind of look out for from the beginning.
So let's recap, because there's a lot of key takeaways and lessons from today's episodes, and we want to do a roundup so you know exactly what your next steps are.
So I just say be mindful about high testosterone men. testosterone men aren't always abusers. There are abusers who are not high T. So I will make the distinction to say, like, the kind of women that abusive men prey on, be they high T or not, generally fall into a certain category. They don't have strong support systems, like good, healthy, strong families, right? They may not have good, solid self-esteem, meaning the guy will, usually abuse doesn't happen right away. A guy will test by doing little things and see how the woman responds to the little things. So if she's responding in certain ways to the little things that indicate she's not putting her safety or self-esteem first, that's an indicator to the guy that he can do more.
For those of you listening, here's what I view as the little things that have always been my own filter while dating. And not to say that I'm bragging, being judgy. I'm just simply saying that once you have this mindset in place, you will be protecting yourself and making it a safe place for you to be dating in this world of crazy, crazy people.
Here's what I view the little things, just from my own personal reference. Like I don't do well with that high T stuff. So
okay.
If it comes across as aggressive, then like manly aggressive, then, because I don't like conflict. And so I'm put off right away. And even if there is any attempt to like grab my arm, whether it's just not a tight hold, but just grab it, any part of me,
yeah,
you know, I'm on guard then. And any kind of stalking is clearly crazy in my mind, or just showing up unexpectedly.
Yes. And should we say stalking as defined as someone who you lay a boundary and say, hey, don't call me anymore, and they still call?
They still call, or
okay.
they I guess, you know, by nature, when you're dating somebody, you give perhaps after a period of time your work number. Well, at the time, your work number. More so now we have mobile. So, but even if they found out where you worked, it's just calling you or showing up at your place of work unexpectedly.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So like if I had to, like with women listening to this, and if they're looking for real life personal experiences, that would be my top 5 list.
Okay. Yep. That's a great top 5 list. So yeah, any unwanted touching, any grabbing, any unwanted physicality, or if you meet someone when you're out dancing and they're too handsy and you kind of move away from them and they're still being handsy, that's a great one. That's a great one. Also, you know, I would be on the lookout for like verbal aggression and put down. Oh, you're wearing those Louis Vuitton shoes or those Christian Louboutin shoes. Who do you think you are? I bet you think you're somebody. Okay. Emotional abuse flag. Why, you know, if somebody's putting you down and kind of like taunting you in a negative way, that's a big flag, right? Getting out of it is so much harder than if you just know what to avoid in the first place. So I think women win through defense. So the more that women understand like the signs that we talked about today, and the more that women in the beginning, you know how I was talking about pick good frames, right? So the more women are conscious about the situations they put themselves in and mindful about that, right, the better off they're going to be. It's easier to not get started in the first place than to extract yourself from something hurtful and abusive.
We talked about ways like avoidance in this episode and using defense as your offense. So let's speak to those women who are listening who didn't use your defensive mechanisms, right? Because we want to fine tune what they are. Some women don't understand what it is. So I've asked Concha to go into a little more detail here.
If you are struggling with a domestic abusive relationship, first of all, I am so sorry. You don't deserve this. And there is help. Please don't feel any shame about being in the situation that you're in. I imagine you didn't know about some of the things that we're talking about today. So, there's no need to beat yourself up for what you didn't know. The most important thing to do is please reach out to a mental health professional. This could be a licensed clinical social worker. It could be a licensed therapist. It could be a psychologist. Anybody who, does some form of counseling or social support. Please reach out because there are so many resources out there to support you for everything you can imagine, from helping you get away from the relationship to helping you rebuild your life. There's like money available, legal support. So just know, and not just that, there's therapeutic and mental health. So if you feel like you're bound by like emotions, right? Just know that there's a way to get out of that too. Not just the physical part, but the emotional part. There is help out there. So please, even if it's something that you're just thinking, well, maybe this applies to me, go on psychologytoday.com and find a good therapist in your area and just start the conversation. There's so much help available to you today.
If you live in the LA area and want to reach out to Concha directly, here's how you can find her.
Right. And if people wanted to find you on social, where can they find you?
That's super easy. I'm Concha Farrell everywhere. So it's like just at Concha Farrell, and it's K-O-N like Nancy, G like girl, I, T like Tom, and then Farrell, F like Frank, A-R-R-E-L-L. And my website is conchafarrell.com too.
And that's another episode of the Keep It 100 Girls Show. Thanks for tuning in. And if you have the feels to keep it 100 in your life, tune in each week for real talk. And I'm talking on relationships, love, sex, dating, women's health, you name it, I got it. Review the show on iTunes, and even better, don't forget to subscribe. Press that subscribe button so that you'll never, ever, ever miss another episode. Help me spread the word because I'm on Spotify, iHeartRadio, Stitcher, TuneIn Radio, Auto Radio, and Google Play Music. You can also get social with me. Use my handle at Nina, N-I-N-A, Babel, that's Babe, just like how you heard it, Babe with an L at the end. And you can find me on Instagram and Twitter. So join Girly Nation, the 100 Tribe, and even hit me up on the Keep It 100 Girl Facebook page. Catch me live on Facebook. Look, on this Sunday, 2/25 at 10 Eastern. People, I'm going to be in my kitchen reviewing my fibroid food recipes, advice, and tips for women who have fibroids. So if you are that woman, you're in the right place, and be in the right place this coming Sunday. That's my real smooches.